You should always get the maximum amount of debt you can get your hands on when buying and investing and building a property portfolio. My name is Thomas Regan. I have a 9 property portfolio and I make these videos to give some insight into what you have to do or how you can build a property portfolio. Now, there is something called equity when you purchase properties, and that is the difference between the debt you have on the property and the value of the property. Now, if you want to grow as your property portfolio as quickly as possible, you need to get access to this debt or this equity as quickly as you can, because the reality is you can't save yourself to financial freedom. You have to leverage yourself there in the property game. And don't get me wrong. I don't mean just get endless amounts of debt, because obviously you have to pay that debt back. But the game is to get debt that you can attach to cash flow, and when I say cash flow, I mean positive cash flow. If you can attach debt to an asset that has rental income that covers the entire debt and the expenses, then most definitely use that debt to go out and purchase more cash flowing assets. So this is like there's, you can have like a varied portfolio. You can have a portfolio that's made up of properties that are low in cash flow and high in capital growth, and then you can have properties in your portfolio that, for example, don't get that much cash flow, but the cash flow, don't get that much capital growth, but the cash flow is good. I guess the goal is to, over the journey of building a property portfolio, the goal is sort of to maintain a position while you are growing your portfolio of at least a neutral cash flow position. Because the reality is, if you were purchasing property and you were building a portfolio, the most stressful part about building a portfolio is, I'm not saying like having an investment portfolio in general. This is not the most stressful point, but the most stressful point about building it would be, I would say, negative cash flow in the portfolio. I don't want to have to be worrying about paying the debt of my property portfolio from my own money that I have to work for. I'd much rather acquire the correct assets at the correct time that are going to do the job of either giving me equity or servicing my debt through rental income. So generally, most of the properties I purchase, I don't go too far on one side or too far on the other. Like, I'm not purchasing, highly negatively cash flowing assets that are in blue chip areas and they have like large capital growth potential. I'm not doing that. Most of the time I'm trying to acquire assets that are pretty close to cash flow positive, and they have good capital growth potential and good equity growth potential. But within that criteria that I'm looking for, there are properties that lean a little bit heavier on they have more equity, and then there are properties that lean a bit heavier on the side of, though they don't have equity but the cash flow is really good. And depending on what stage I'm at of my journey will depend on what type of property that I go for. Now, I've got 9 properties in my portfolio, and I'm getting to the stage where I can, the next time I do an equity release, I can probably buy maybe like 4 or 5 properties at a time. And for me, I'm investing in an area that is going through a market cycle, and it is at the start of the market cycle. So the way I see it is, I just want to acquire as many assets in this at the start of this market cycle as I possibly can. And The issue is the short term problem for me will be, because of my financial situation, is that I will not be able to get the equity back out straight away. So the type of properties I'm looking at for this point in my journey is just effectively I'm looking for as much property as I'm looking to acquire, as much, increase the size of my asset base as large as possible at this point. But I'm looking not for equity, I'm just looking for properties that are very good in terms of cash flow. Okay, so, and whatever stage you're at in your journey, whether you're buying, the first property, the second, the fourth, or the 10th, whatever, you'll probably most likely need a different type of property or different types of property to move to the next level. Like, for example, if you are a single person and you have no properties and you have no savings, but you have a job that pays well, the best property for you to buy at that stage with no savings would be a property that has a lot of equity in it, because you can go from having no savings to buying a property. And let me just be clear here: if you're buying a property with no money, you have to borrow the money from somebody. But if I was gonna help someone buy a property and I knew I was going to get the money back, I would definitely lend them the money. So maybe there's a family member out there that would be happy to lend you the money if you have no money, but you have to prove to them that they're going to get the money back. But anyway, so yeah, if you have a high income but you don't have any savings, it's much better for you to get a property that is like the first property that you get, being one that is high in equity, but the cash flow might not be as good, right? And then from there, you can get hold of that equity, and then you can start looking for properties that have better cash flow. But there's no point if you have no properties, same situation, and you have a high income. Let's just say that person, similar situations, somebody's got no properties and they're looking to buy their first property, but they have low income and they have a lot of savings. Then the type of property they would be looking for as their first property would be a cash flowing property. Because why? Because they have a low income, so they need to get their hands on a property that will increase their income, their servicing, so they can buy another property. And as I said, they have a lot of savings, so that is not the issue. So yes, it just depends where you are in your journey to the type of property you buy, but I wouldn't go too far on one side or the other. Anyway, I'll wrap it up for that today. But yeah, basically in property, you just want to get a maximum amount of debt you can possibly get your hands on. The thing about equity is if you don't release it, your property may be worth far in excess of what you have as a mortgage on your property, right? So for what I mean, you might have $1 million property. Say when you bought it, it was 600 grand, but you're just bought it a long time ago, it had a lot of capital growth, and now it's worth $1 million, and you only have a $500,000 loan, for example. Then what I'm saying is you have a lot of equity in your property, but if you're an investor, you will release that equity as soon as possible and then put it into your account as an offset. You will have that as accessible cash in equity in your offset account. And the reason you'll do that opposed to just leaving it there as unaccessed equity is because the banks could just change their policy at any time, and then if you haven't released equity, you could potentially not be allowed to get access to that equity. So it is just every time, whenever it's possible, get your hands on your equity, because it's gonna give you the options to make the next move and move forward with your property portfolio. Cheers, guys. Bye.